I think whenever we're ready, we can go ahead and get started.
Great. Well, I'll kick off and MK can join in if and when she gets here. I'm going to start by reading sort of from a script that Andrew's provided me to make us all nice and legal, so bear with me for a minute. Welcome to the meeting. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with Emergency Ordinance 20, TAC Alpha 6, an emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at this meeting are James Cathro, Roger Schickadance, Karen Davenport, David Storm, Craig Roller, Sean Bridge, Diane Greider, and Robert Finley. The persons responsible for receiving public comment at this meeting are the 5th and Avon Community Advisory Committee. The opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County. Andrew Newpel, Charles Rapp, Carolyn Schaefer, Rick Randolph, and Donna Price are also present at the meeting. I sent out yesterday the minutes from both the February meeting, which was took place in an entirely different world than we currently inhabit, and the June meeting where we didn't have the opportunity to review those minutes because that was a heavily county facilitated meeting. The way sort of in general that we're going to operate here is if you have a comment, you can either group chat it to me or you can raise your hand and I will acknowledge in the order that I receive them. The chat button, if you sort of mouse over the Zoom meeting, you'll see a chat function at the bottom and there's an opportunity to raise hands there as well. So you might want to have that pulled up and I will acknowledge as I see them. I did send out the February and June minutes, courtesy of Craig. For those who are present, are there any amendments to those meetings that that you notified or that you would like to share? If not, could I ask somebody to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve the February and the June minutes.
Second.
All right, the February and June minutes are hereby approved. Next, we're going to, we're going to introduce our new planning director, but I'd like to give the floor to Diane for just a second and allow her to introduce herself and provide a little bit of your background and tell us about why you're interested in serving the community.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hi to everyone. I'm delighted to be joining you, taking Jonathan's place. I said to Andrew when we had orientation yesterday, I guess I have big footsteps to follow, and we have very different styles. Jonathan's a lot more esoteric than I am. I'm a more pragmatic person. So we'll have different personalities here. But my husband and I retired from the Hampton Roads area, Suffolk, Virginia, and moved here a few years ago, permanently 2 years ago. We were kind of feeling things out for a little while, making sure this was the right move for us. We had lived in Suffolk for 28 years and we're delighted to be here. It was a definitely good move. We did a lot of research and kept coming back to Charlottesville, where our eldest daughter went to UVA. So that was a great connection for us as well. And now that I'm retired and I own my own business, I did a lot of traveling around the country, kind of traveling around the world. I said I wanted to have time to contribute to the community and give back and hopefully be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And talked to Donna about this group, talked to Jonathan and Donna, and they were encouraging. And so here I am. I'll do my best to be a good member. Thank you. Appreciate
Well, thanks so much. We're delighted to have you here. And I'm a fellow Reformed Hampton Roads alumni myself. My wife and I split time between Virginia Beach and here. But
Okay,
welcome so
great.
much, and please don't be shy to ask any questions that you have the group. I'm probably the least experienced person here, but there's lots of years of experience and wisdom on this panel.
Great.
So with that, let's move on. Charles, you're new too, and I think you've got about 20 minutes to introduce yourself and give us a spiel.
Sure, that'd be great. I appreciate everyone giving me the time to speak this evening and introduce myself. I put together a couple quick slides just to kind of introduce my background and some of the stuff we're working on this year in the Community Development Department, particularly in the Planning Division. Talk about some of the ideas I had for CACs, and then certainly open to questions and go from there. So let me share the screen real quick.
Okay.
All right, everybody see that?
Yeah.
Great. So again, my name is Charles Rapp. I'm the Director of Planning here at Albemarle County. A little bit about myself. Grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. Relocated up here to Virginia in 2011 with my family. I've been an Albemarle County resident since 2012. I'm an ASP certified planner. I'm a licensed landscape architect. Some of my background professionally, experience in land development consulting on the private sector side. I'm doing a variety of different developments over the years, mixed use developments, multifamily residential, commercial developments, all types of stuff. And then for about the past 9 years or so, I've been over in the public sector. Most recently as the planning director for the town of Culpeper. So I'm happy to finally be working in a community here where I live, much more engaged, obviously, as the commute's a lot shorter. It's a lot more exciting to be involved in projects that directly affect me, my family, and the community that I live in. So started here about a week before the whole COVID scenario in March. So it's been an interesting 4 or 5 months now as we made all these transitions. I know, unfortunately, the CACs were down for a little while until we were able to get this process up and running. I did have the ability to watch y'all's last meeting with the ABC Albemarle Business Campus project. It was an exciting one, and I'm sure more will be coming your way as we have these things back up and running now. Got a couple of major projects the planning department's working on that were started before I got here. And so we want to complete those before taking on a much larger one. So there's the Crozet Master Plan that's been underway for a little while, the Rio Area Form-Based Code. And that form-based code project is a pretty exciting one that I think can be the basis for additional form-based code elements throughout the community. We're about to start a railroad corridor study to help improve traffic and future development along that corridor. And then the major one that will be most of interest to this CAC and all the CACs, as well as other groups within the county, is the comprehensive plan update. We're required to update that plan every 5 years through state code. And so we'll be taking a look at that and identifying which elements of that plan we want to update. And obviously we're not going to be able to do just a comprehensive everything in it, but we'll pick the key elements and we'll really try and focus in on some of that stuff so that we can get back to planning. I know, and then we'll get back into the master plan process once that's finished. Another thing we're going to be working on are ordinance revisions. I'm sure y'all know there's a lot of inconsistencies between our comprehensive plan and our master plans and our some of our older ordinances that need some updates. So we'll be looking at some of that as well in the future. As far as CACs, one of the things I've been talking with staff that I think would be great is to kind of establish maybe an annual work plan for CACs. There's all these different issues that I know are of importance to the community. Everything from land use, transportation, to parks and recreation, and other topics as they come up. And I'd love to find a way to kind of set some regular patterns to when we address those and bring in different folks from the county and other agencies that are really specialists on that. We have Kevin McDermott with transportation and VDOT and some of our land use planning. I'm sure you all know Andrew Newpel and some of his group with Rachel and Michaela and some of the stuff they've done. And start integrating parks and rec and trail planning and things like that, and start to get into kind of a more of a work plan flow. And obviously we'll have to still work in our development applications and those community meetings that are certainly important to this community as well. So with that, that's really all I had to present. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. Sorry, it took a couple months to get here and actually get in front of y'all, but I'm happy to finally be able to introduce myself and look forward to working with everybody here. I know there's a long tradition of great planning in this county and this community, a lot of engagement, and I'm excited to be part of it. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions y'all may have. Otherwise, I'll be sticking around for the meeting. and appreciate the time.
So with that, if you have questions, if you could either raise your hand, if you mouse over the participants icon in the bottom of your screen, you'll see, and you click on that, you'll see an option to raise hand, or you can chat to all panelists and we'll acknowledge the questions in the order they come in. But I want to sort of kick off with a comment. Charles, I really appreciate your idea of having a rotating schedule for what we do. Because I'm relatively new to this, I kind of feel like sometimes I respond to the issues that the county puts in front of me on my plate, rather than getting a chance to be proactive and engaged in thinking about what the future of the county looks like. That agenda is sometimes developed for us. So I think having a long-term outlook, a long-term plan for what we do as a CAC, for me, would be incredibly valuable. And I look forward to supporting that effort.
Right. Yeah. That was my hope too. If we can dedicate a couple of months to really focus in on transportation and then a couple of months to focus in on Parks and Rec planning, rather than trying to hit each one briefly each meeting, as things pop up, I'm hoping that we can kind of get a little further into some of that detail, and really get into the meat of those topics, and flush some of those concerns out. And then we can take that information into the comprehensive plan and into future master planning efforts, and really guide those visions.
Great, thanks. Let's pause there for just a minute and we'll see if anybody has any questions. I see one hand raised from David. I'm shocked. David, please go ahead.
Welcome. We're glad to have you. I did have questions about sort of timing on a when do you think this group, I don't know if you've had a chance to look, Crozet Master Plan should be finishing in the next 8 months, 6 months?
Our latest schedule, it's sometime around March of 2021.
Okay, so yeah, we'll say 8 months.
Yep.
Then you're diving into the comprehensive plan.
Yep.
This group's master plan exists, but when it was created, I don't think it was fully fleshed out at the time. I think if you go and you look, there are definitely some, as you put in terms of the comprehensive plan, some inconsistencies. So I would certainly like to squeak a little bit, and be that squeaky wheel for this group, in this area to get its master plan sort of in a good space, like many of the other master plans are. The staff's done a great job in moving them forward. I just really like to see that with this group, especially because we do see and an increasing number of development applications and rezoning requests in particular that are going to come through, both on the Fifth Street side and on the Avon side.
Certainly, I would agree. I think it's a much needed plan. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of development pressure already kind of underway and in the planning process now. So the quicker we can get to that, I think the better it'll help guide that. As far as the comprehensive plan, obviously that's a big undertaking. And that's where I think we're going to try. We haven't fully scoped that yet, but I think we'll try to really pick some specific topics to tackle rather than try and do the entire thing, because that can easily grow into a 2-3 year process. And I know there's master plans waiting to be updated and created and things like that. So we'll certainly keep that sensitivity in mind as far as timelines and the other needs throughout the community.
Anybody else? Great. Oh, yeah, Roger, the manual hand raising message.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot how to do the digital version. I just wanted to add to Dave's comment that there's a request from our group for a small area plan for the Avon extended area that also includes the area around Monticello High School, where high school, was it number 2, is planned. And so I just wanted to let you know that that's a concern for us, that we would like to see something in progress there.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Well, Charles, thank you so much for your time. We'd love to have you back again sometime soon to update us on how things are going. And welcome to the county.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Our next agenda item is a development tracking update from Andrew.
Great. Well, thanks all. I'm excited to have this opportunity to share an update with you about our development tracking system. You'll have seen a little bit of this over the past about year and a half, but I recently updated it for build out as of July 1. So I just want to share a little bit of background information about the development dashboards project and about some recent activity along the Avon and Fifth Street corridors. So you'll have a chance to ask questions. I've got the system pulled up. The back end, I can also walk through the dashboard as well. But just want to provide an opportunity to just get everyone caught up about how the system works and some recent activity there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I've got 3 screens, so I'm trying to figure out which one is going to share when I hit share. Well, can you all see my screen okay? I should say July 2020 pipeline update.
Yes.
I see some head nods, so we're in good shape, it sounds like. So as a reminder, we released our development dashboard system in early 2019, I think at the joint CAC meeting we had that year. This was kind of an attempt to improve on some of our earlier work to track development applications as they work their way through what we call the pipeline, which is essentially every step of the process between when a rezoning or special use permit application comes in the first time, works its way through approval by the board if needed, and then works its way through site design, site planning, subdivision planning, and finally through construction and final build out. So really trying to have a way to quantify everything that's happening in the county. It covers all of our development areas and rural areas. We do track subdivision activity in the rural areas. And it's a pretty good resource, we think, for tracking what's happening in the county. We know we're a high growth locality, and this is part of our attempt to get a better handle on what's happening and prepare and plan accordingly. I'll spend about 5 minutes just doing a quick overview of the dashboards and kind of our process so far, what the aim of the system is. I plotted about 10 minutes for corridor activity. You all have to ask questions about projects in the area. I'll have a little bit of background information about a couple areas that have had some high development activity as of late, and any other clarifying questions that are needed. I think we had about 30 minutes on the agenda. We might not need all that time. But I just want to have the opportunity with you all to share everything that's happening in the area and let you all ask questions. So as I mentioned, this is a lot of information we have about development activity that's happening within the county and trying to quantify that, make sure we know exactly where it is and track it as it goes through the process. This is really important data for us to use as we work through master plan projects. We need to know what's kind of coming our way and how we plan and accommodate it, and where we need to focus in on topics such as infrastructure and capital planning. Every 2 years, we conduct what's called our residential capacity analysis, which we last did a year ago, last summer, 2019. We produced what we called our growth management report from this findings. And this is part of the county's comprehensive planning goal includes a strong growth management policy that seeks to direct new development into designated development areas, which are about 5% of the county's land area. This helps us really provide infrastructure efficiently, help make sure our county develops the way we want it to. It also helps protect a lot of the natural and scenic resources that are important in our rural areas. The capacity analysis is a projection about if our comprehensive plan or our county builds out according to the zoning ordinance and our future plans, how many people will live here in 20 years or whenever this all builds out. So it's, this information helps feed into that, helps us know sort of in the near term how much development we can expect and kind of a 5 to 10 year horizon. We've also started to use this data for capital improvement project planning. We've started to use this with our transportation project prioritization process. That was a lot, that was a mouthful right there. But we use it to help know where we can expect increased vehicle trips and traffic to be generated by new development. And it helps us to also understand too where target investment can help promote the goals of the county's master plans and comprehensive plan. We've also used it in school enrollment and facility plans. I've worked with the Albemarle County Public Schools facilities planning team. We use some of the information about elementary school districts, middle school districts, and so on, and where development's happening to help guide which enrollment and projections we take. They use a make sure different methods project cohort survival and how many people will continue to move through the system, but we use some of this information to help them understand where they can expect growth in the next few years, and also where we need to consider long-term facility expansions and investment, and potentially redistricting if that's a topic that the board chooses to pursue. But we use it for a whole lot of different investment decisions within the county and for our planning work. As I mentioned, this has been a project we released early last year, and we're still working on a lot of long-term goals related to other system and process integration. I'm kind of the process owner of the system currently, and I hope in time we're able to expand it, get some more folks on board to help maintain this system in the long run and help expand its use throughout the county. We've also started to work on adding more information about residential unit types. So are we constructing single-family detached homes, townhomes, multifamily apartments, and if so, how many bedrooms? We also added some information recently about what type of commercial or industrial spaces are being created. Are they office spaces? Are they warehousing? Are they manufacturing spaces, and so on? So really trying to get a better track on what's happening, understand what type of development's happening, and plan accordingly, since all these different types of units have different impacts for, say, pupil generation for schools varies by housing size, housing type, water and sewer demands as well. So really work to expand how useful this data is for our planning, but also continue to improve the quality of the data and the structure and making sure it's a useful tool for our planners moving forward. I mentioned a couple times the main tool we rolled out is what we call the development dashboards, and that's kind of the public facing side of this development tracking system. It's a tool that's available on the county website, and I'll show a link up in a couple minutes. But this is a chance for community members to access recent information about development in the county. It allows you to see where projects are in the development review process, the individual steps that they're going through, information about how many units are proposed and where they are. And you can filter that by comprehensive planning areas, by the CAC's areas, matched school districts, elementary school districts. So it's a good tool to know exactly what's happening in the county and where it's happening and when it will come through. I'll pull up the dashboards kind of after I finish my presentation, but I'll share some background information because I know we've had a lot of folks join the CAC since my last presentation about this, I believe. This diagram shows the general development review process in Albemarle County that I mentioned as it works through what we call our development pipeline. So on the left-hand side, we have at the earliest stage, legislative review projects, and these are the rezonings, zoning map amendments, and special use permits that come before this group, typically a couple times a year for the community meetings and other feedback from you all. These are the projects that go to the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission. They are reviewed against the comprehensive plan, and they're discretionary actions, meaning that the board ultimately makes the call on what happens with them. After such a project is approved, it moves into our site design review. If it's a commercial project or any sort of housing project that involves more than 2 dwelling units or a townhouse, it moves through our development review process, which includes site plans, subdivision plats, and water protection ordinance reviews for erosion, sediment control, stormwater management, as well as architectural review. And these are all reviewed by county staff in accordance with the county's zoning ordinance, where we lay out design standards and expectations for height, density, and so on. This is a technical review stage, and it usually takes, you can take over a year to get through this process, depending on the complexity of the project, how it's phased, and kind of the complexity of the site. After the final site plan or subdivision plat's approved, as soon as building permits are issued, we consider it to be under construction. Whenever we, as staff, I kind of flag that whenever I see, there's dirt being moved on the site, there's grading happening, there's the first building permit's been issued, and I see a foundation being poured and popping up on our GIS. I flag that as being under construction, and we count that in that category until everything's all built out. Every every building has a certificate of occupancy. That means you can live in it legally, it's safe to inhabit, or the zoning clearance is approved and it's open and operating and completely built out. So these are kind of the stages we use in our development dashboards as you click through the stages on the screen, but I just wanted to share some information with you all about how we group that out. In reality, the process looks a lot more like this. It's a lot more complicated. I'm not going to walk through that, but that's also on the dashboard website if you all want to review the different types of applications and permits and help understand what that means. I believe you all get emails about the site review committees, projects that have been submitted. And so that's kind of in this orange area over here if you want to take a look at that. This kind of helps you understand what these application types are and how it all moves through the process. I'll mostly do a overview of the dashboards after I kind of finish some brief overview, and I can show you all how to use it, or if you have questions, I'll answer them using the dashboard. But this is a map of the development pipeline in the 5th and Avon area from showing projects as of January 1st of this year. I won't go through all of it, but I'll say that there's been a bit of activity in the area over the past 6 months into the first half of 2020. Even with a pandemic going on, the area still remains pretty busy. I'll jump through a couple smaller areas. We can come back to this map if we want to. And if you have questions about other areas, also be sure to send this map out via email to you all after this meeting. I finished it up today, so that's why the date is July 16th, and I haven't had a chance to share this with you all yet, but I'll pass it along as soon as we're ready. So again, you might have seen a couple small changes between these last two maps, but I'll just go through a couple small areas along your corridors that might be of interest to you. Our first area we'll look at will be the Old Lynchburg Road corridor, kind of near the 5th Street County Office Building. My mouse is kind of following along 5th Street, Old Lynchburg Road, Route 631. And you can see Old Lynchburg Road right up here and Interstate 64 in the upper right-hand corner. This is all fairly, you've all heard a lot about this area in the past couple months. As a reminder, there's the Albemarle Business Campus rezoning that's currently under review. The most recent code development shows about 150 residential units proposed there, and I don't have the exact figure right now for commercial square footage, but you all saw that last month, so I won't rehash that too much. And I'll just share that I think we're starting to see the end of the Oak Hill Farm, Wintergreen Farm development building out. We're at 3 units left there. It looks like all the building permits have been issued. So I think we'll expect things to wrap up in that area fairly soon. I'll note that the Brookdale development, which are I think 96 multifamily units between Old Lynchburg Road and Country Green, received their final certificates of occupancy this past the first half of 2020. So that project's essentially finished building out. I'm not sure where they are with leasing or how many folks have moved in yet, but as far as the county's review process is concerned, they've received their certificates of occupancy. That's essentially finished with construction. So I think we'll start to see things start to calm down in this corridor for a little bit, but we know that we have some projects that are going through the rezoning process in the area. Southwood's just south of here, and they're working through some of their first site plans for the first village there as well. So that's kind of a first area we'll look at. We'll move a little further south down 5th Street, where we're starting to see the Whittington development. I believe a couple more phases are starting to finish up here, but there are about 12 units remaining in this corridor so far in the Whittington development, south of Mosby Mountain. I think we can probably expect to see that start to wrap up soon. So we'll see a lot of the single family development along this corridor will probably start to slow down within the next calendar year as these projects all start to finish out. We'll probably see a break before some of these other projects move all the way through site design review and construction that I mentioned, like Southwood and the AC project. That kind of covers what's happening in the 5th Street corridor for right now as far as recent development. I can go back and count how many kind of certificates of occupancy COs were issued in the first half of this year, but I know These projects have been kind of chugging along for a while. It looks like they're starting to wrap up. I'll real quickly jump over to the Avon Street corridor, sort of south of the Mill Creek Drive area where we're seeing a bit of residential development occurring. This area, we do see a lot of development happening, particularly in the site design review process we mentioned earlier. We do currently have site plans under review for quite a few projects down this way. There's the Moss property, the 2511 Infinity project, which is a small, I believe, multifamily project. Galaxy Farm, which was approved by the Board of Supervisors, I think at the end of last year, is working through their site plan approvals. Down towards Spring Hill Village, there's which is sort of near the southern terminus of Avon Street at Scottsville Road. It's 100 units. They're moving through the site plan process currently, and there's a concurrent proffer amendment rezoning process moving forward. I don't have a whole lot of information about that, but that relates to a transportation proffer that was made, and it's a request to change the scope of the improvements on Scottsville Road. But that project's going to move forward. And Avon Park 2 here at the southern edge has been dormant for a while. They did, I believe, submit a site plan, might have been a final site plan to keep that project moving. There was some state legislation that expired, I think, at the end of June related to site plan approvals that kind of extended their time for action due to the Great Recession. And I believe that project may have been included in that area. But that project is still under review with the county currently. But all in all, about 217 units right now are working through development review with our planning, zoning, and engineering teams. Again, this is that technical design and review. That's all happening in that area. As far as projects that are actually under construction, Avinity Estates, Avinity 2 is continuing to build out. There are about 39 units left in that development. And I can go back and check to see how many have been built today if the CAC is interested in that info. But again, quite a bit of activity towards the southern edge of this corridor, both happening currently and that we can expect to see a lot happening in the future as well once these projects make their way to site plan approval and so on. I know there is some grading going on at Spring Hill Village, but I don't believe the site plans have been fully approved yet at this time. I need to double check on that though. I'll also just caveat and say that I kind of have to pour through every plan that comes forward, and I see every time a plan gets approved, I have to go back and manually change this in the dashboard. So I might have missed that one. I can double check on that. But that's generally where things are in this process so far. I'll jump over the dashboards in a second, but this is the URL if you're all interested in accessing the dashboards in the future, and I'll send that out in an email following this meeting as well. But you can access that there. We include the PDFs of the maps for your area, but also everywhere else in the county. We do include the raw data available online. It's the same thing we use in the system, and it's not too pretty to look at. But if you're able to kind of piece that together, it's all available for your use if you want to be a citizen scientist. But with that said, I'm happy to take a pause here to answer any questions. That's just a real quick overview of everything happening in your corridors as of late. But I'm happy to jump on the dashboards and share some information.
Hey, Andrew, before you do that, I think MK had a question. Maybe let's pause there and see if anybody else has questions before you jump into the dashboards.
Thanks, guys. My question sort of related to, so for example, when you were talking about the Oak Hill Farm neighborhood and you talked about how many units were remaining there, obviously I live in that neighborhood, and that is something that is of interest to us because I believe they're actually done. So I'm curious about how accurate that might be, but you know, basically that's my question. There are some conversations locally in our neighborhood about what happens next. Like after all the COs are issued, there has to be some kind of release, right, from the county?
Yeah, at the end of the process, I believe if the roads are accepted or built to public road standards, they usually have to meet the VDOT process for acceptance into this, the state secondary system. So I think that, I think at some point, I think roads are usually bonded and other utility systems at that point. So usually after the COs are granted, the developer has their bonds released and they usually finish up with all the other construction process necessary for the roads and utilities to be accepted into these systems at that point.
Would stormwater be one of those?
What was that?
Would stormwater be one of those? When you say utilities and roads, is stormwater one of the things they might be bonded for?
I'm not sure. I can speak out of that, Andrea. I'm not sure if they have to bond it typically, but they do have a plan and they have to do an as-built survey of that, usually in coordination with their plan that's on file with DEQ. It gets inspected, it gets verified, and that's all needed before they can close out their stormwater management permit that they have for that development.
Okay, thank you. I just was curious because for all these, it's kind of like, what's the end, Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I know that typically, if there are enforcement issues or compliance issues related to the site plan or subdivision plat, usually that the certificate of occupancies are tied to the completion of some of these subdivision plats and these other public improvements on the site as well. So those are usually required to be completed. There has to be safe access to the homes before a CO is issued typically. So there are some kind of enforcement mechanisms there that prevents those being unfinished before they're all issued. The data is as of July 1, so it's possible that over the past couple of weeks, these might have been completed or there might just not be a certificate entered in the county system that I look at. Since that process is mostly handled by our building division. I don't see every CO that comes across that's issued, but I usually track along a system. But yeah, it's kind of an approximate build that we use from a high level from the county-wide, just to eyeball the general pace of development. So it might be finished by now. Those other 3 houses might be wrapping up, but based on what we saw in the system as of July 1, I saw three units left that did not have COs, but acknowledge there's data quality is a lot of work we need to keep doing with this project.
I do have a second question just about, it seemed that you kind of skipped over the Southwood project. Was that just, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, but it wasn't shown on the drawing.
Yeah, that project has phase 1 of its first village under site plan review currently. I'd like to pull some information about that. I know that the plans are a little hard to read for that one from my perspective right now, since I'm not as involved in the project. But that one is moving through the site review process. I believe there is a final site plan under review for that first phase.
Hey, Andrew, in general, who's the intended audience of the development dashboard? Is it meant to be primarily a public-facing tool, or is it something that staff uses internally? And my correlated concern is it seems like it's a really manual process, and we could quickly learn to depend on you to be updating this manually. And when you get promoted or find your next opportunity, I can see the public learning to lean on this tool and then having it kind of become obsolete because the staff lacks the ability to keep it updated as much as you're doing.
Yeah, certainly. I think that, so the intended audience of it, I think we found that there are plenty of folks that use it. I know that I typically have sometimes real estate market analysts reach out to me for this data, and I usually point them here first before I have to spend time pulling together summaries of what's happening in the area for them. I know that I usually pass this along as the first point of reference to community members that want to know more about what's happening in their area and kind of show them how to use it. I know that county schools and other groups have used this as well, just to kind of get a quick eyeball on what's happening in a certain area. As far as construction projects, so it's a pretty broad user base so far, both internal to the county and residents and other stakeholders and developers have used this before. Just again, to get a quick glimpse of wanting to know more about a project. This can help point them to the site plan documents and other information. And yeah, I think we've been updating it twice a year so far, just as we've started to build out the system. Been trying to update it as of January 1 and July 1. All the process really could be automated. I think that's been a topic on my kind of to-do list for a while, and we're still managing to work through. There's also some exciting developments happening with the county's GIS licensing. We're eventually moving to the ArcGIS Online, which is a pretty great interactive mapping software service that would hopefully expand a lot of this capacity. So I think we're hoping to continue to make this more accessible and more user-friendly, and to certainly help make sure it's institutionalized and sustainable from an organizational point of view.
Awesome, thanks. It doesn't look like there's any questions in queue right now. So if you want to give us a quick overview, I think we've got time to support that. If you wanted to show us a visual.
Yeah, sure thing. Let me pull up my browser real quick and I'll just do a quick how-to for folks that haven't used it before. I see a hand raised from Dave.
Yep, and while you're doing that, I think David's got a question.
Perfect.
I didn't notice the, I noticed some commercial. You had H&H, you had the Oak Hill Market, but I did not notice, and maybe it just wasn't there, the Center 2 listed is shown. You had the potential of the Mill Creek self-storage as well. And with the land transfer with Center 2, should that be on that map? On the Avon Street side, Mill Creek side?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've actually not really tracked, that went through the compliance with the comp plan, which is a similar process, special use permits and rezonings, but I haven't actually not usually put those in this database, and that probably would be a good point of improvement in the future. I think that as that moves into a site plan submittal, we would see that pop up on here, but that is kind of just a procedural oversight, I think, that we haven't included that. But that would be in that Mill Creek corridor as well in the future. And certainly the development pipeline, the maps do show other commercial areas as well. I'll comment that those are a little harder for me to track sometimes just due to the nature of the construction there. They don't always require new building permits or other certificates of occupancy, which is what I usually use to track build out. So I'm not as familiar with some of those projects. I don't track those as heavily, how they move through the process. Some of the projects, like I think H&H and others that don't require new construction kind of disappear a little bit after the special use permit's approved from the way the system's set up. But this are certainly listed, shown on here as well. It's already...
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
I'll just real quick show the dashboard interface for folks that haven't seen it before. It's accessible through the county website and community development. It's www.org/development dashboards. And once you scroll down here, you'll see it as a kind of an inset in the browser. If you go to the lower right hand, the gray bar, and click on the arrow buttons, that's what you need to do to enter full screen mode. It makes it a lot more legible. From there, you can move through the different parts of the dashboard. There's an arrow up in the upper right hand that says start here. You can click on to get some more details about the dashboard. On the lower right hand, there's 2 sets of arrows you can use to move through different slides and stages. The overall dashboard lines up with the stages in the development review process. This first screen actually shows kind of an overview for different areas about what's in the pipeline. So if you use the yellow box, the yellow border, gray box on these interfaces, you can click by CAC, elementary districts, magistrate districts, and so on. So it's a pretty quick way to filter through different areas that you might be interested in. I'll go ahead and click on CAC and select 5th and Avon, so it filters only to projects within your area, and all the information at the bottom, which is a summary of how many projects are at that stage, how many dwelling units might be proposed, how many units might have been built so far, are all available on the bottom. You can actually click on these headers and see what the status of these projects is. I'll go ahead and click on Site Design Review. In the middle, we can just see what's happening in this area. It's currently a little bit buggy sometimes. I've taught myself how to use this. I'm not perfect at it. But if you go back down to the yellow box and filter by CAC, Fifth and Avon, we can take a look at the projects that are working their way through site plan review currently. I'll note that on the left-hand side is the project name. The second column indicates if there's a related rezoning of interest or if it's a by right project. So some of these you can see, for example, Southwood Village 1 is related to Southwood Phase 1. There's some information about how many units are proposed and a brief description of the project. You can actually see at the bottom portion of the screen how many dwelling units are kind of in this project. You can see that I think this first one, still working on the numbers to make sure these are accurate here, but somewhere around 75, I think, as far as what's shown on this site plan already. I think the numbers are a little funky. Don't quote me on these, because I know that the approach at Habitat Study with Southwood, this could happen in a lot of smaller phases. We'll see other site plans that will come in for other buildings. But where we do have information available, the kind of pie chart in the lower right shows a mix of dwelling types proposed as well. You know, multifamily attached and single family detached being part of that. And then Galaxy Farm as well. I click on that and it filters the same way. And it shows again, for the 65 units there'll be about 30 that are that single family detached category, and 35 that are in a townhouse category. So these are some information, the examples of the types of information we try to provide in the dashboard system. Again, these are all taken, I write these down when the initial site plan comes in. They sometimes do change throughout the process, or they're sometimes kind of classified a little strangely on the site plan. But we do try to make sure we do some quality checks intermittently on the data that's in here to make sure it is accurate and reflects what's actually getting approved. Again, at the bottom of the screen, there are a couple arrows you can click on to move through these different stages. Shows the filters, shows some visuals about the units that are proposed there, and where different projects are in the process. This one again shows units under construction. There's an additional graphic that shows project build out. Again, we measure this based on certificates of occupancy. We think it's usually a pretty close approximation of what's actually been built out so far. And it is mostly measured in dwelling units. So when a large apartment complex comes on, it usually comes in, you know, one building at a time, you know, 36, 60 units at a time. So it can jump up. A large apartment complex can definitely, you know, skew some of the project build out relative to you know, single family subdivision. But again, we do try to provide dwelling mix information so you all know what type of development is happening in your area. But with that said, I'm happy to answer any other questions about the area. I just want to provide a quick update on where the system is so far and some other projects happening in your area. So I think we might have a couple more minutes for this item. I just want to answer any other questions you all might have.
Thank you so much, Andrew. We'll pause there for a minute and see if there's any questions. All right, it looks like you scratched the itch for everybody, and our next agenda item is liaison updates. So let's go to our supervisors first. Donna and Liz, over to you if you have updates for the group.
Well, I'll start. Last night at the board meeting, we had a conversation among the 6 supervisors, and we did an informal poll. And I just want to make sure it's clear that it's understood that no formal action was taken. And this has to do with the pandemic, the reopening, the movement led by the state government on going from phase 2 to phase 3. Each of the supervisors expressed their particular place and position. And if I might be so bold as to say, I think there was a fairly strong consensus about concern over moving from phase 2 to phase 3, but the board did not take a formal vote, did not take a formal action on anything. Instead, what we're anticipating is a meeting next week where we will have more information from the Virginia Department of Health. We're looking to have consultation with the city of Charlottesville, UVA. Obviously, from my perspective, we want to make sure we're also working with the town of Scottsville as we look to see exactly how the county will move forward. There's been some discussion about sort of a hybrid aspect of the phase 2, phase 3 situation. I think most of us have seen the rising numbers of cases around the country, the state, even within our own area. We are just a couple of months away from the potential of schools opening, students from UVA coming back. And so I will speak now solely for myself. I have some great anxiety and concern over what the next few months may lead. I believe that there is a degree of fatigue that has set in among the population everywhere with the face masks and the social distancing, but now is not the time to relax. I think we have to be very careful. I personally am concerned as we move to permitting groups even as large as 50, but definitely at phase 3, 250 or more. So I do want to be clear in addressing that because there was a little confusion in the media this morning about, that the board had quote, voted, close quote, to keep Albemarle County in phase 2. And that was not what we did. We did a poll to see where the different supervisors were. The other thing, of course, is we do want to work as close as we can with our neighboring jurisdictions, which principally would be the city of Charlottesville and the University of Virginia, under the university being under state rules. Because if we don't have a coordinated approach moving forward, then we're going to have a lot of confusion among residents. And so that remains, this pandemic situation remains a major issue. I'm very pleased that we've got CARES funding that's coming in. We're able to send money out into the community. I think $1.25 million last night we discussed, getting out and helping those who are struggling in a variety of ways, be it housing, unemployment issues and things like that. So those were really some of the big things that I think the board is looking at. Also, just a few days ago, had a great briefing. The Broadband Authority, working with body funds, Virginia Technology Funds, CenturyLink and ABA have joined together, and we've got, I lost count of the exact number of houses, but it's just hundreds of houses and businesses are between now and March of 2021 going to see fiber optic cable. Most of those businesses and residences are in the Scottsville district, or at least Southern Albemarle County. That's another thing that we're very concerned about, because as we have social distancing, as the school board is still trying to figure out exactly what they're going to do with regard to the schools next year, we know that many of our residents do not have adequate access to the internet or even cell phone coverage in a number of areas. So, the thought towards more virtual classes is perhaps great for those who have good internet access. It's really a problem for those who don't. So we have a lot of major issues still to be worked on. And I think those are probably the biggest issues of late coming from the board.
Okay, I'll just fill in a few extra things in what Donna talked about. As far as the broadband is concerned, it's, as she said, a CenturyLink project that's 837 fiber to the home projects that goes along the St. James River, is Howardsville, some in Schuyler, Green Creek Road. There are also, there's a few in every single district. They are kind of heavy in Samuel Miller and Scottsville, but they are in every district, and we're quite excited about that. The other thing that the board did relatively recently was decide that we would use some of the CARES money for broadband too, and we haven't. And so that's going to the Broadband Authority for discussion, and Mike Culp, the IT director, will certainly be leading that charge. To add a little bit more to the CARES money, Donna mentioned the $1.25 million for the community, for community and human services, COVID-19 emergency relief and resiliency efforts, but also there was $1.25 million additional money for the business grant program. So that's the one that is that CIC is administering. So this is the second wave of the money to help the business community. And there was additional housing money. And of course, many of you probably already know it was announced a week and a half ago, not through the board, but through the state, that the governor has a effort to do 50% relief for residential rents for landlords that want to take advantage of that. So basically, the landlord gives up 50% of their profits, and they don't charge the renter, and the state pays the other 50%. They're trying to figure out, I think at this point, how they're going to administer that. I don't remember all the details there. The big thing that kept us up till 11:30 last night was Yancey Lumber, which of course is in the Crozet district. What I think is, one of the things I think is important about it is that for this group is that our comprehensive plan has said that the interchanges, the 64 interchanges should complement rural activities, rural agricultural activities like mills. It's a very, very difficult thing because the community has really, really suffered. The mill has not been good neighbors at all, but we're still working on that as how to keep them open, because essentially they have to modernize or they'll have to close. And I have to tell you, I'm so sleepy at this point from yesterday that I don't remember the rest of the stuff we did yesterday. We did a lot. So I'll stop there and let Rick do the Planning Commission.
Before we go over to the Planning Commission, is there a good spot where we can look and see what properties and what communities are getting that additional broadband access?
Yes, there is. The Broadband Authority website has all that information on it, and should be relatively easy to see. It's really scattered. It's a variety of ones scattered throughout the area. And if you want a little later or tomorrow, I can send you out a link to this whole committee, or Andrew certainly can do it to get that information out to the whole community. It's pretty interesting, actually. It's also interesting what Civic is doing with their fiber to the home. They have 3,600 residences in the county, and they are connecting all their properties to fiber to the home over the next few years. And that information is also on the Broadband Authority website.
Great, Dave. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Any questions for our commissioners before we go to the Planning Commission? All right, Rick, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, James. Spring Hill Village is going to be before the Planning Commission this Tuesday. I haven't got my packet yet, so I can't tell you everything that's involved in that application, but having seen pre-application and certainly talked actively with Roger about it, it doesn't seem to be that there's anything excessively objectionable in there. but never know. There always can be surprises, so best to wait until we actually had a chance to read it. We were, as a planning commission, meant to look at another economic development proposal for what used to be called the Village of Ivy. Certainly it is no longer a village. There is only one village, and that is the Village of Ravenna in the county currently, but that application is deferred, and so the Planning Commission will look at it then. Give you an update on some things of interest, but not without controversy. Breezy Hill, a economic development and residential development proposal that is just east of Ravenna Village, was unanimously disapproved by the Planning Commission, and then it will go to the board. Whether the board will see a revised application or not, I don't know. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as I close. Yancey Mills, it was unanimous by the Planning Commission to approve the staff report 7-0. The board has had different thoughts about that. We haven't necessarily all been on the same wavelength. Tiger Fuel, Boyd Tavern application, the Planning Commission rejected 7-0, and that was a 3-3 vote before the Board of Supervisors. So we're going to need to have some discussion as a Planning Commission to get greater clarification of what the board is now currently looking for, so that we can understand where they're coming from. I do want to close with mention about Breezy Hill. The Daily Progress, quite unusually, 2 days after the Planning Commission meeting, posted an editorial essentially arguing that the Ravenna master plan wording was creating confusion. And we as a Planning Commission are trying to be very sensitive to master plans, which after all originate with residents in the community. That they represent the thinking and the best wishes, and also the best guidance from staff as to what is in the long-term interests of the county. And we certainly have wanted to respect master plans as much as possible. So that's something that we'll be talking more about, how much guidance the master plan should provide. Certainly I know Planning Commissioner Moore has said, and she represents the Whitehall district, thereby Crozet. She had said that she wishes that Crozet had some of the tougher language, that residents in the Village of Ravenna worked very hard to get into the master plan in terms of no expansion of residential growth without an attendant investment in expansion of road carrying capacity on 250. So those are issues that aren't going away. They certainly are part of the leitmotif of what the Planning Commission has talked about with ABC. They were a consideration with Southwood. They have been a consideration with the Avon Street corridor situation and the small area plan that David brought up earlier. So these aren't Johnny-come-lately issues. They are very much fundamental issues of what citizens are expecting and the level of trust and confidence they have in their government to deliver, especially when they've made representations. So all of those things are in the cauldron of what the Planning Commission is looking at and looking forward to. And I will be happy to field any questions from anyone.
If there's no questions, I have a comment, actually two. I just looked at the Broadband Authority webpage and I didn't see the information, so I will be emailing that to this committee. My second one is to Rick, and the fact that we have had some differences in voting between the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And I just want to say that I read the Planning Commission meetings very carefully, every single solitary meeting, and I value them dramatically. and that I hope the Planning Commission continues to be independent in their thinking of the Board of Supervisors, because there's tremendous value in that. So it's wonderful to all be on the same page, but at the same time, that independence is critical, I think. So thank you for the work that you do on the Planning Commission, Rick.
Thank you for the work you do in the Board of Supervisors, Liz. Scratch, scratch.
Okay. Thank you, Rick, and thank you, Liz. And I think Roger has a question for Rick. Roger, you're on mute still.
I read that in the Daily Progress too, about the provision that there couldn't be expansion without the infrastructure keeping up with it. And I was just curious whether in the master planning process, it was just the will of those residents that got that? Were there not any legal issues or any attempt to create consistency among master plans that would have shut that down? I'm just curious how that got through and whether that was an exception or it's something that could become the rule if everyone is diligent about it.
I think the best way to answer that is to say that each master plan is very much sui generis. It's developed in the local community based on the input. The Fifth and Avon CAC is different in terms of its culture and its concerns and its focus than, for example, the village of Ravenna or the Crozet CAC. So each one of these communities are slightly different with different emphases. But I will say this, that I think the reason why that language, which says it is essential that there be improvements to the roads prior to any transportation, any residential development on Route 250. The reason for that is that the residents that we were not at that time a CAC. The CAC did not come into existence until 2011. And I was original member of that CAC. But the residents who worked very closely with the county on the master plan, they were emphatic about the need to have some language in the master plan that demonstrated a need for a quid pro quo, that if there was going to be additional residential development, ergo, there needed to be an investment in transportation. The issue that really we keep dealing with as a planning commission is not just transportation impacts, but David, as you're well aware, it's the educational impacts. And in looking at Breezy Hill, we were looking at the fact that for Stone Robinson School, they were expecting 10 new students this year. They ended up getting over 70. So they got 60 more students than they had projected. And you know, the reality is that we currently are incapable of recouping any of the additional costs associated with expanded residential development for schools, transportation, public safety, et cetera. And you know, this is just an unfair bargain, because who ends up footing those costs? The existing residents do. And that's just not a smart way to be doing development. So, you know, that kind of thinking was completely ignored by the editorial in the Daily Progress. No mention of that whatsoever in terms of the additional impact. So very much this was a byproduct of determination of the residents to make it clear in the master plan that there had to be conditionality for future residential growth in the village of Ravenna.
David? David, you're on mute still.
Try this again. I'm just echoing a little bit about what Rick said with the schools and what we've talked about. Andrew has been great sharing with the Long Range Planning Advisory Committee for the school division on which I sit with the dashboard, and when we talk about what development is going where. The harder part is that the school's model for projecting growth seems to be broken. In the last couple of years in particular, we saw it at Stone Robinson, we've seen it at Cale, we've seen it at Brownsville, we've seen it at many of the elementary schools in particular in the county. And the question is this a one-off or a two-off? Are we going to soon have enough data where they're going to have to revisit their models and the numbers that they provide in to developers as they come through? The second piece I'd like to build on what Rick said was in terms of the comprehensive plan. I just am hopeful that we see that in particular with the Albemarle business campus as it comes through. The comprehensive plan, the master plan for this area calls for a heightened level of amenity with 5th Street at that location, Old Lynchburg Road at that location. And when I hear county staff saying, well, it meets minimums, that's fine, but the master plan calls for enhanced amenities. It doesn't call for minimums. And I've put that in writing to the supervisors and to the planning commission in that regard. So I'm happy to hear what Rick is saying, that those plans and this CAC did not come into existence until after the master plan for the Southern and Western District, if I remember correctly, during that process as well. Mm-hmm. So that was a piece that we as a community had asked for, those enhanced opportunities in those locations, especially in locations that aren't designated as development centers in that plan. So I think, as I said last week, I don't want to rehash this. I'm sorry, last month. It's a great opportunity, the Albemarle Business Campus. But I also think that it's a great opportunity for the developer. It's also a great opportunity for the county to really use the master plan to help benefit the community that project is going to be in.
Rick, any thoughts on that, or are we tying that up with a bow? All right, I think our next agenda topic is over to Andrew for future items.
Yeah, so to touch base with the group about what comes next. I know last month we did talk about some future items that would potentially going to include that Mill Creek self-storage proposal. As that was supposed to be this month, that will likely come back at a future date. The project's been deferred. Currently, so that's not on our radar for this month, and we don't know when that will kind of be back next. We will be talking about a Parks and Rec update next month. This group certainly had quite an interest in Biscuit Run as it moved through the master planning process, and we'll hopefully have some folks here from Parks and Rec to share some information about that project as it moves forward. But other than that, we're kind of wrapping up with the first, next month is our first, we kind of put together a 3-month plan for the CACs when we started to come back after the coronavirus forced us to move our operations online. I'm sure we'll probably start to explore what comes next and other topics. So I think certainly happy to continue the conversation moving forward about other topics of interest to the group. If community meetings come up with this group, when it will return to our normal meeting times. I know that ABC last month was kind of a special meeting. It was off of our normal meeting time. Partially due to the performance agreement timeline and expectations that were set out there. But we can expect our normal meetings to continue on the third Thursday of each month moving forward. And that's what we'll address next month will be Parks and Rec. I won't be here next month for our meeting, so I'll probably have Rachel Michaela will probably fill in as things are currently planned. But I'll certainly keep you all updated if anything else comes up. I think that's all I've got.
Great. Hey, thank you so much, Andrew. And I will doubly advocate for being interested in the Biscuit Run update. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they have to say there. And if you didn't see, Liz Palmer just sent us an update on the 5th and Avon Advisory Committee email on the broadband exchange. So thank you for that, Liz. Andrew, do you have any closing remarks or out to the crowd? I see there's one hand raised, but I can't see who it is. So whoever that is with your hand raised, please speak up because I'm not able to see who you are right now.
It is Nicole. She's an attendee. Nicole, unmute yourself, please.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you, thanks.
Okay, thanks for calling on me. I just, Nicole Scrow, I'm developer of Galaxy and the Mill Creek self-storage, just in case anyone doesn't know me and there's new CAC members. I know that Kelsey gave a presentation last CAC for the ABC project, and she mentioned that the self-storage on Mill Creek came up, and I know we were supposed to present this meeting, so I just wanted to quickly say where we are on that. And I'm sorry that usually I'm an advocate of doing some heavy lifting on public engagement, and I knock some doors. Of course, that's not possible with COVID, so I apologize for that. But at any rate, we're doing some elevations and architectural drawings to see its visibility from Avon and Mill Creek, as well as looking at other options. Anyone who knows me knows self-storage is probably my last personal choice for this property, but as far as things go, sometimes other factors dictate what you can do. So anyway, I just wanted to give a quick update on what we're doing on our end, and it will probably be quite a few months before we're able to come back, if at all, honestly. So I just wanted to quickly say that, and I'm glad to see everyone's doing well during these crazy times. So thanks for letting me jump in a little bit.
Great. Hey, thanks for jumping in, Nicole, and participating. And MK, over to you.
Yeah, I guess this question is for Andrew, as sort of a follow-up to my previous question with respect to when developments get to the end of their project. And I know you were saying with residential ones, sometimes completion compliance is tied to a certificate of occupancy. And I know you mentioned that there are bonds for roads and some other things, but maybe not stormwater. And I just forgot to ask at that time about landscaping. Like, for example, when the site plan gets reviewed and approved with the county, there's a landscape plan that's approved as part of that. So I'm just curious, as a resident, who goes back to make sure that the developer did what we all approved or what the county approved?
Yeah, I think that's usually a code enforcement officer would usually come out to the site and make sure the landscaping that's required is there. And I think that road plans and other topics would usually show the locations of street trees and other kind of plantings like that. I'm not sure with Oak Hill Farm. I know that's entirely single-family detached development. I'm not sure if there would have been a site plan applicable there. So there might have been different standards in effect. But Charles, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, no, you're correct. Typically, you'll have somebody from zoning going out and verifying compliance with the site plan for any type of landscaping that was shown on the site plan, especially for like a commercial development or something like that. They're gonna verify the number of plants, number of trees, things like that. With street trees, that's typically also going to take place as well when they walk the street, that you're going to check the curbs, the sidewalks, all that kind of stuff. So it kind of depends on which group is going to be inspecting that within the county or which agency. But there is, if it's shown on a plan and it's a requirement of the ordinance for the development, there will be an inspection to verify that the intent of that site plan has been installed prior to final release of those bonds and the CO usually associated with that.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, to the group, any last thoughts, saves, rounds, or alibis? Great. So our next meeting is tentatively scheduled with the caveat that everything is sort of up in the air right now. It's tentatively scheduled for August 20th at 7 p.m. Opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting will be posted at a later date in accordance with Emergency Ordinance 20 TAC Alpha 6 and open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. I move to close the meeting. And I saw
Thank
Karen
you.
seconded. Thank you so much to everyone for your participation tonight. It was great to see everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you in a month.
Bye.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.